Hi guys, and welcome back to another episode at Rabbit Hole Stories. And today we had the pleasure of having Phil Lojacono on. He's a fellow Swiss entrepreneur, sold a company, used to work in the Fiat mine, and decided to launch his own Bitcoin business. And another one of these hidden gems, I think, Ian, because that was a good conversation.
It was. We kind of went down the whole government fiat system structure and its incentives, and yeah, it was a really cool conversation. And it really sort of like expands the conversation about how you see things through a Bitcoin lens. And once you fall down the Bitcoin rabbit hole, how it really sort of exposes the truth, right? And on that note, we might as well just dive into the episode and stay curious.
Hi everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Rabbit Hole Story. And today we've got a fellow Swiss on the call. Phil, you're Swiss only, right, with your last name? Or is there also anything mixed in there? Okay.
No.
How has your day been so far?
It's been pretty good. It's a lot of things going on. I think we will get into that later on. But I just recently started my Bitcoin business, and so I'm trying to juggle around all the different market experiments that I'm currently in. So no, but it's good. I'm happy. How about yours?
Nice. Yeah, that's the most important thing, being happy. Mine was busy, but busy days are always good. How about you, Ian?
I was at the Fiat mine, but mate, I got myself down some rabbit hole today. And I'm like, it's almost like this end of days thing I've been watching on YouTube. Do you know the Tony Blair Institute or some shit?
No.
Mm-hmm. Tony Blair has got an organization called the Tony Blair Institute, right? And he's just organized a conference that's happened over the last couple of days, right? And it's called The Future of Britain 2024. And it's got these old sort of like politicians. They're talking about government, AI. They're talking about defense and the future of defense, and make the narratives and the language they're coming up with. It's dystopian. And I've just gone down some sort of rabbit hole of despair. So that's how my day has been.
Nice.
You asked, and I said.
The show's called Rabbit Hole Stories. We never actually see which
exactly.
But speaking of Rabbit Hole Stories, Phil, what did you get started in Bitcoin? Why did you decide to stick around? And guide us down your rabbit hole story.
Yeah, sure. Happy to. So, well, my rabbit hole story basically started in 2016-17, but maybe let's start with my background a little bit. So I have a background in finance and banking, studied that, but then always only worked on the tech side of things. So I started my career, if you want to say so, at Google in Dublin. And then started my own business with two co-founders. It was an SME financing platform. So basically two-sided peer-to-peer platform. But we just provided the technology, so the marketplace, and then other investors were able to finance SMEs or their working capital, to say. And then in 2015, I pitched at an event, a startup event, fintech event, and then I saw the presentation of Nicholas Nicolaisen, the founder of Bitcoin Swiss. And I was like, "Good, this is interesting." So before, I don't remember at least to ever heard of Bitcoin or so. Maybe I did in the media, but I didn't really remember it. So, but then I listened to his presentation. I was like, oh, there seems to be a lot of potential, but I was also very focused on my own startup. So I just let it be on the side, but I was never against it. So I was never some sort of skeptic or so. But then in 2016, I thought, well, maybe just buy 10 to 15 different coins without doing any research. I just thought, well, maybe there is a potential. And then I invested it. And then 2017 was kind of the ICO hype. And like all my coins, they just pumped like crazy. And I felt like, well, you're kind of the superstar investor. And I still didn't have any clue about anything, honestly. Like you heard me saying stupid things like, yeah, blockchain, yes, but who knows? There seems to be a lot of different coins. Who knows which one is the best and all these kind of things. So I made all these mistakes in 2017. And then obviously, as we all know, everything crashed and I also lost all my gains, and so it's like, okay, humbled for the first time. And then in 2018 around, I thought, well, I kind of still believe in it. Like I still see the value proposition of all they say. Maybe I should start looking into it a bit. And then I started. It was still a side of my own startup, so I was very busy there. But then I started to realize, also talk to a lot of investors, especially our main shareholder, and he's a long-time Bitcoiner, and he was always like, "Look, there's only one." I thought, okay, why? That doesn't make any sense. But then 2018, I started to really look into it, and then I was more inclined by the technology back then. I started to realize why Bitcoin is better than all the other cryptos. So that started to make sense in 18, 19. And then 2020, we sold our business, we sold our startup. And COVID crisis hit, COVID lockdown started. And then suddenly there were a lot of puzzle pieces that kind of fell together for me, at least, because then all of a sudden I started to realize the economical things as well. Because as I said, I studied finance and banking in my master's, but business administration in my bachelor's. So, and there I was always skeptical about Keynesianism and all these macro models that they taught us, and like also in the combination between statistics that we had, but then going into macro, in which they kind of taught the exact opposite from what we learned in statistics. So that was always weird for me. So I asked a couple of questions back then, but I mean, you know how it is, right? It's just like you go along and things, you just don't care that much about it. But then 2020, when the lockdowns hit and all these free credits came to the market, and I mean, we were super lucky with our with when we sold the company. We sold the company roughly 1 week before the lockdowns, and our business was completely devastated after the government gave out free money, because obviously you're a financing marketplace, so nobody pays for loans if all of a sudden you get it for free. And I was like, okay, so we were super lucky, so that was nice, because otherwise we wouldn't have survived. We had a couple of hiccups, as every other startup has as well, along the journey. And then if COVID hit us, there's absolutely no chance that we would have survived that. So that was lucky. But not only that, also a couple of other factors that I took into consideration, and I just thought, well, that's just not how it works. Like, money printing doesn't create value. It's simple. It's like, there's this famous Millet quote that I really like. That's like, it goes in the direction, don't quote me exactly, or I don't want to quote him exactly, but it goes in the direction of, if money printing would generate value, then printing degrees would end stupidity, or something like that. And it's exactly like that. And I really liked that quote. Obviously back then I didn't know it, but I was like, yeah, okay, so just printing money out of nowhere, it cannot work. There must be some downside to it. And then that was really when the whole Bitcoin thing started to click completely. I was like, okay, so that was probably a smart move, also maybe lucky, but to have a position in Bitcoin since a while, and already understanding the tech and the network effects, etc. So that's when because then we sold the company. I did the integration with the new company, but then I quit relatively quick. And became CEO of a real estate company, a joint venture between Switzerland's largest retail bank and Switzerland's largest insurance company. And that's when I really dug into the rabbit hole. I spent at least 2 hours every day on listening to podcasts and reading all books that I could possibly find. So then if you start once, then there's no way out, right? Then there's so many other things that you start to realize. Then 2.5 years ago, roughly, I talked more and more to all my friends about it and wanted to convince them that it's the best thing ever. Then I started to write a newsletter in which I try to find, or to write in easy words about Bitcoin in the combination with macro as well as politics. So kind of this triangle I wanted to write about. Did that, and I really liked it, but I liked it primarily because of it. It was also a good exercise for me. Very good to learn when you write stuff. At least for me, I can remember it way better. So I did that, and I always knew I want to go back to entrepreneurship anyway. So I did the real estate joint venture for 3 years. So I had the corporate funded experience now as well. My previous startup was VC funded. And then I was like, okay, so now I was able to put a bit of money aside. Not like that I could stop working, but a little bit. And I decided that I want to start my new thing again. And I want to finance it. I want to bootstrap it, because I'm involved in like 4 or 5 other startups, and I see the same mistake all the time. I did it myself, actually twice. So if you get external funding and you have too much money, you don't spend it wisely usually. There are lucky punches, no doubt about that, but the chances that you spend it wrong are extremely high, and I think it's just human. And as I said, I did that as well, so I wanted to avoid that mistake, and therefore said, okay, good, I want to start my bootstrap company in the Bitcoin space. And so that's well, it wasn't really a nutshell, it was a long a long monologue now, but yeah, that was my story.
I remember talking to you last year at Lugano Plan B, and you were like, I still have to survive 3 months at my job, like the joint venture role you were talking about. You're like, I want to get into Bitcoin now. Like either they fire me or I find another avenue out, but I need to get started now. So it's good that you were finally able to make the transition and get moving.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I talked to our board quite early on, and I got along very well with our board and our investors, so that was nice. But it was just like, I think if you've been in entrepreneurship once, then it's very tough to be an employee, especially in a corporate setup. So then it's not necessarily only good. There are a lot of people that do a great job in that. I don't think I did, and hence I decided to go and pursue my passion.
Mate, and you're well on your way, so well done to you. But one thing that struck me, and one question that came up in my mind was, you were kind of pretty much fully immersed in peak fiat, like bank, Google, real estate ventures, and obviously understanding Bitcoin in that environment. How was that for you? Like, how did you kind of, now you fell down the Bitcoin rabbit hole, understanding Bitcoin and operating within the sort of like centralized fiat entities of banking? What was all that like for you?
Well, that's a good question. I actually think my peak fiat moment was the VC funding of my own company. I think that's the biggest sign of the fiat world that you.
Did you buy a car, Phil, or like an overly expensive apartment?
No, we were
an orange McLaren or something.
Trust me, we made a lot of mistakes, but we weren't wasting money on us. Let's put it that way. We were wasting money on some business decisions. That's clear, but not on us. So I didn't get out of that as a rich guy. That's for sure.
None of this is financial advice.
Yeah, exactly. No, and then, well, I mean, I think one thing that you can see in especially being involved in finance corporations, it's just like how much money is spent on unnecessary things, and that's also a result of fiat, I would say, because that I think that would never happen under a Bitcoin standard. People would much more think about how to invest their money, how to invest their time, which is essentially the same thing, how to invest all their resources, and that's not happening, or not happening as much as it should in corporates, and that was interesting. That's for sure. Other than that, I mean, at Google in 2014, I didn't really think about that, to be honest. Like that was just, for me, that was a nice experience. Google back then was an awesome company. I met so many great people, and I didn't really put that much thinking into it. And then in the start, like if you found your own startup, and then obviously you are kind of dependent on the whole funding, the VC funding. So you don't question it as much as you should, maybe.
Yeah, totally. And one thing you were saying as well was you were already curious or already skeptical of the whole Keynesian world in a way.
Yeah.
What skepticism was that? And I guess my question is motivated in the sense that before you understand Bitcoin or before Bitcoin ever existed, you kind of exist within the structure. You just have to get on with the environment you're in, right? But
Yeah.
Bitcoin being the key to something else, and then you fall down a rabbit hole, and then you realize the difference and the flaws of the fiat system.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yep. Sorry. So didn't want to interrupt you, but there were
No.
two. So there were two situations that I really remember that I will never forget. The first one was that we had statistics 101, and we basically what we learned was about median and average. So very, very, very basic statistics. So it was just like, and then they told the statistics prof, he told us like, look, you will see so many news reports in which they misrepresent the overall sample size, and because they only focus on the average. And then he brought this example of what would you do if you have 9 people that earn 100K and one person that earns 10 million, and then all of a sudden the average is 1 million basically, right? Something like that. But the median obviously is way lower. So would that be a fair representation? That was the question on how we were kind of introduced to these basic statistics. And obviously that made a lot of sense, and there's no question about that yeah, there are skewed averages, etc. And then it was literally the next day where we went into a macro lesson, and then we talked about the CPI. And so it's like, so wait a minute. So now we had this one lesson in which we learn about basic statistics, and the next thing we learn is that you put all baskets all everywhere for every person in the same thing, and you come up with one average, and you say, so this is kind of the status of inflation. So that doesn't make any sense. Like that was really one of the things, and I actually remember asking that question on, like, there are so many factors that you cannot, it's impossible to put that into one number, right? It's only the technological advancements, like how would you factor that in, but then also the individual, like only age wise, if I only look at my past 20 years, I have a completely different basket. Like I would fully agree in Switzerland, or when I was 20, I think inflation was basically inexistent for my basket at my 20s, because all I needed the money for was kind of a bit of food, a bit of drinks, lots of drinks, let's put it that way. And all these things, they didn't really increase because we had globalization and we had technological advancements. Now ask me 20 years later, my friends and my family and we, all of us, we're looking into, by maybe where would we like to settle down? So now it's a completely different question, right? Now we're talking about, okay, what's about the real estate prices and all these things, and there are so many questions around that, and yeah, so that wasn't answered in my studies. And then the other situation, and now I forgot this very famous macro model. What was it called? TSLR or something. Four letters. It doesn't really matter, but it was like an import-export model, and what they taught us there was, so they tried to factor economy of country A into economy of country B, and then they wanted to say what the implication is if one factor changes. And that doesn't make any sense. I'm sorry to say, but this is like economics is you have humans in there. Humans take different decisions. It's like you have emotions there. You have that's just not so simple. So and that was when I questioned the fact that they tried to put business administration and economics into a form of science that is basically natural science. That is like they try to use the same methods that they do in physics and mathematics and try to do something like that in economics, and that just doesn't make any sense. So those were the two moments when I was like, no, this is not correct. And then I remember another one from finance lectures when they talked about the efficient market theory. And they taught it in a way that, yeah, that's a given. That makes like that's the reality. It's the markets are always efficient. I was like, this is so stupid. It doesn't make like all the facts speak a different language. And yeah, that's when I started to question also what they taught us about Keynesianism, and that you can just print your way out of misery basically, and all these things. So that, but yeah, I think as usual with pretty much all the students, it takes a while until it clicks. You need real life experience. It's not just theory doesn't really do it. At least for me, maybe I'm just not smart enough, but I needed to experience it.
I was just laughing at market efficiency, that there's a very particular lesson that comes into the back of my head when I was at uni, for the short time I was at uni. And I remember two of my friends had a internship at one major investment bank and one major, let's call it like a credit institute. It was also dealing in retail and stuff. And they both sat there, like, that's absolute bullshit. Like, if we go into our jobs, and bear in mind, internships is like you push paper around and you're maybe lucky to be in like 2 or 3 good meetings. But even then, they went like, this is nonsense. And I sort of sat there because I freelanced early. I was like, so if the market's efficient, I could raise my prices basically month on month end, because, if the market always performs, like I also have to adapt, right?
Yeah.
I raised the question. I got kicked out of the classroom for asking that question. I was like, well, but like, that's what you told us. But again, this is, I think, part of the scam, because I think if you go out to the street and ask everyone, like, are you happy the way things are right now and how we're being managed by the government? Although, like, we elect them and they should work for us, but that's a different topic. Most will go no, but they can never put a point to why they're dissatisfied. And very few of them actually could say, it's an issue with like central banking and the way the fiat money works. Everyone sort of suspects something's in the bush, but you don't know what it is. Maybe it's like, I don't know, politics. Then you start fighting about like migrants or not migrants and these things. Or then it's like a bank fails again. We're getting used to this in Switzerland. So like, oh yeah, we'll save them again. So, all of these things sort of combine. And I think this is also sometimes why it takes people so long to understand Bitcoin.
Yeah, absolutely. I fully agree with you. And that's one of the things that I started to realize more and more when I wrote about the link between Bitcoin and politics. And I mean, it's not one side. It's not a one-sided issue. You have, like, for instance, that we at the start of the 90s, we had 4 massive banks. As there's one left, so they consolidated into one. I don't think I ever heard the question of any big newspaper, also on more of the of the right, or let's put it that way, of the economy friendly side. Nobody questions that. It's like It's always, yeah, okay, it's management mistakes and stuff like that, which is obviously also true. Like it's not only the system, but nobody questions why does it consolidate into bigger and bigger and bigger players. And now we have one left, and there will clearly be troubles with that institute over the next 10 to 15 years again. And it will again be... Yeah, sorry.
And you know what I find more shocking with my new best friends, the regulators? If you actually watch the progression with how the banks failed, and during the failures, how much jobs were created at the regulators to prevent the failure. And now you go like, you have this gigabank between UBS and Credit Suisse, or whatever you want to call it now. And like you have the highest amount of employees at the regulator, and they've done jack shit to actually protect investors or protect customers. So you also have this progression where you go like one end just gets massive and the other end gets well, and no one looks at it and goes like, maybe the people in charge of regulating the stuff did a bad job, so let's cut that down, and no, let's not save the bank. But yeah, mind blowing. Sorry to interrupt you.
No, but it's exactly true, and I mean, it's honestly, it's also one of the effects of fiat, right? It's like there's so much money spent on unnecessary things that in the end, it only protects the existing system, but it doesn't really in the end anyway as well, right? But it's like so because we were regulated as well, our startup, so we went through the same thing in Switzerland and in Germany. And I mean, we were a small company, right? We almost needed 2 to 3 FTE just to deal with these regulatory questions. It's ridiculous. And it doesn't help. Like that's where I can fully understand where your frustration comes from. It's like, okay, so you put all these hurdles in our way, and then all of a sudden you have this multi-billion institution just whoop, going poof out of into the nirvana. And obviously they made a big mistake, and everything, like what they said, yeah, it's too big to fail, and yeah, we have new regulators, and now that doesn't happen anymore. And then you have Janet Yellen that says like, we will never see a banking crisis again. I mean, at one point probably we should question the system.
Yeah, that's the thing. I think the average person, they don't know what fiat money is or what it means. They don't know what Keynesian economics is. And like we've just had a general election over here in the UK where Labour have got a huge majority, right? And there's almost like in the media, there's like this huge marketing, PR. It almost feels like they've just wheeled out a new kind of government with a new promise of a better future for all. And it just seems like just so theatrical and based on these kind of false promises of economic growth and getting us out of this cost of living crisis, when really at the root of the issue is fiat money, right? And the way the global economy works, and the World Bank and the IMF, and how that's all connected. And essentially we've got private organizations that dictate the decisions and the money that we spend things on, because they're heavily reliant on investments and all that sort of stuff, and driving certain agendas. And people get just mind boggled by it all, and they just don't see how it all operates, right? They know that something is wrong. They know something doesn't feel right, and that over time our living conditions are getting worse, and we're feeling it more and more, quicker and quicker. And I'm wondering whether there's going to be a tipping point where people are like, actually, what is going on? But I don't know what is behind that and what will instigate that, really.
Well, I do think you see a big difference now. That there were moments, especially last year, when inflation really skyrocketed, and then people get used to it again, and it's kind of slows down a bit. But when inflation was 10% and more in certain countries, I felt like people are questioning it a bit more. And then, yeah, okay, the story was the Ukraine war, etc.
Yeah.
But I think in the end, people need to feel the pain. And it's just, if you keep on, like if the inflation keeps on being at around 2%, 3%, then well, it's not that bad. But now they suddenly it was 10% on the CPI, and as I said in the beginning, CPI, in my opinion, is a fraudulent measure in the first place. So it was way higher on some topics that hurt people a lot, and then there were more questions. At least that's at least how I see it, or I hope maybe it's more of a hope that they start asking these questions. But I mean, last year we had elections last year in Switzerland, and before that election, I wrote a series of our like 4 main parties and how those should be linked to Bitcoin and why Bitcoin is beneficial for their main interest. And then we have a party that's called SP, that's like social party. I personally, I'm clearly not. I clearly don't share their politics. Like, absolutely not. I honestly think they're really bad. Like, really bad in a sense that they make everything worse. But I do understand some fundamental points that they bring up. I do, like, for instance, there is one woman from Zurich, from our biggest canton, at least people wise, and she claims the whole time that, well, the how do you say that, the scissor between work and capital is constantly getting bigger and bigger. So capital gains are bigger and bigger than work. And I was like, yeah, please. so and then what the solution that they present is, yeah, I think we should basically print more money or go more in debt to help the workers. And I'm like, guys, this is not how any of this works. And so I wrote this piece, and I sent it to her and to about 6 or 7 others that constantly talk about that. I obviously didn't get any reply. I tried to engage with a few, but it doesn't. I understand. I mean, I'm probably not the only one that writes them. I see that, but I mean, it's such a fundamental thing, and there's seemingly there's no interest to really understand it, and you see stupid statements all over again and again and again, and it's just like, I think very, very few people really understand what money is and what monetary policy is, and that money is essentially the basis of everything we do. Like, it's, yeah.
It's almost like people are like sold in and believe that a new government can make real new change and deal with the issues of the last government. And for me, it doesn't matter if you're Tory or Labour or Lib Dem or Green or whatever, no matter what your ideology or your kind of manifesto is, right?
How dare
You're
you, Ian,
always...
forgetting the Reform Party?
Oh, sorry, Nigel. How can I forget? And it's just all theatre and bullshit at the end of the day. And it's just like, no matter what your ideology or your agenda, fiat money is just, they're always going to let you down, right? Because it just means more control, more dominance, more money spent, and more time that we have to surrender to them in order to fulfill their sort of manifesto, right? And it's just, I don't know, it's a frustrating point for me at the moment, watching people simping over the new Labour government, and they're sort of like coming out with these big presentations and we've acted immediately, we're going to solve this, we're going to do that. And I'm just like, wow, people are really sort of like still sold into the bullshit, and it's almost like they've been brainwashed. And what Bitcoin obviously does, it drops the veil of reality, right?
Absolutely.
So
yeah, I mean, that's one of the things that I really think is it's so interesting. I mean, all the facts speak a very clear language. I mean, the most obvious is the US. I mean, they expanded the deficit constantly, and it doesn't matter. Like, it's complete. It doesn't matter if it's a Republican or a Democrat or whatever it is. It's the same thing all over again. And people, yeah, just don't ask enough questions. And I think one of the things that I learned over the last few years, and I think it's probably people are not taking care of that enough. So even if you speak about big organizations, big corporates, but also governments, etc., just massive organizations, people don't understand that those are all only humans. Like, there's simple single individuals. They're not smarter, by far not, and they're not better. They're just simple humans. Like, an organization in itself cannot take a decision. Those are humans. So you have to look into the incentives and also the character of these individuals. And then if you look at politics, at governments, then you have a type of human that gets to these positions, and those are not the smartest. There might be a few. No, there might be some very good characters there as well. No question about that. But I think the level of narcissism is relatively high, and the level of the need to be loved is pretty high as well. So
Yeah,
they
sociopaths.
yeah, exactly. They try to do everything they can to get elected again, and that people like them, and they like to be in the media. And you don't get into the media if you actually propose a reasonable and just some sort of a law that really helps, but that doesn't generate headlines. And so that's the same thing for big corporations as well. Now you clearly you have very good people at top of corporations, no question about that. I had a lot of very smart people in the management as well. But you have to understand how the people that get to the top in a management-led company, for instance, are different than people that get to the top in an entrepreneurial environment, like Elon Musk, who is like the entrepreneur. I'm 100% sure he wouldn't get to the top in a management-led company. And so that what I'm trying to say is that we have to take care of what type of characters get to the top in which situation. And that's like even here in Switzerland, where the highest element of our politics is the public, essentially. So we have referendums all the time. That's on paper. I see Joel is not 100% aligned, which
we
understand.
We do have them. They just do jack shit. Like you tell them don't do this, and they still do it. So
no, I agree with you. But even here, so suddenly then we have the Bundesrat, so our
Federal Council.
government. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, thank you. And people look at them as if they were like holy people. Like, and I'm like, they're not better. They're not smarter. They don't have all the answers, by far not. It's completely different. And I think that's how we should look at it. Those are just human beings, simple.
Yeah, and they can. I mean, okay, they can make mistakes, and I think, especially in the Bitcoin community regarding politics, a lot of people would be less angry if politicians and governments would just admit to their mistakes. Oh yeah, it was a mistake printing money. It was a mistake bombing countries who had no involvement with us. We're really sorry about this. We'll put these measurements in place and it doesn't happen. It's then up to us to always safeguard that they actually keep these promises. But we wouldn't be as mad as we are right now because we all know it's all just a lie. It's all just a show. But speaking of the entrepreneurial management standpoint you had, you then left your job as a CEO of that joint venture.
Yep.
You knew you wanted to go into the Bitcoin space, and now that you've been in it for a few months, what are sort of the biggest hurdles you see now? Because you still have to engage with the fiat world, but you're already engaging with the Bitcoin world, and there's always going to be compromises between these things.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, that's one of the things that I anyway think is a mistake that we see a lot. Like a lot of people think in black and white. A lot of people think everything is binary, so you're either in this or in the other, and that's not the reality. The reality is there is a lot of gray, and there are a lot of bridges that can be built. And so I started with my Bitcoin business, and as I said, I wanted to bootstrap it. So that's why I thought, okay, I put money aside, but it still needs to generate some revenue at one point. Cannot just do everything.
Cannot sell the orange McLaren.
No, exactly. Yeah, I wish. No, so I thought I will start with education and consulting, and then consulting. My dream would have been to be a consultant for SMEs and help them to go on a Bitcoin standard. And so now what I did is I started with multiple projects. So now I have 4 projects. So I'm actually very happy about how it goes commercially. So that's nice. That goes okay. But those 4 projects are in completely different directions. so that's where I'm struggling a bit. So I have, for instance, I help a startup in business development and fundraising. And then I work with a bank. kind of helping them understanding Bitcoin and also what they can do with their Bitcoin and with their Bitcoin offering. There I see
Maybe
some
you can
challenge.
advise Germany at the moment because they're doing well, providing more Bitcoin for us plebs.
Yeah, that's true. Exactly. And then I have one project in the mining space. So a solar expert that is looking into how mining works in combination with solar panels and the battery. So that's very interesting. But I have to admit, like I understand the mining process. I understand very little of the actual energy grid and how energy works. So that's challenging for me. But I'm getting into it. And then the last one is an actual SME that wants to put Bitcoin on their balance sheet, but also work with Bitcoin. So my challenge right now is that I have 4 completely different projects, and I took the decision to start with my company in May and gave myself until the end of Q3, until the end of September, to really narrow it down. Then to really say, okay, so this is going to be my focus. This is going to be my focus. And so that's one of the things that I'm struggling a bit with. And then we do have some ideological challenges now as well, because one of the things that I can clearly see is, for me, there is a lot in question in how do you say, what are those? I don't know the
quotation marks.
But yeah, thank you. And there is some money to be made within the traditional financial world, and that's likely a lot easier than advising SMEs. So that's one of the things that where I see challenges, right? If you don't offer your own product, like if I see a lot of potential amongst businesses, but that potential lies in brokers and maybe custodial services. You need to offer a product. Just advising them, it's like a half an hour thing, right? And then it's like, what can you do? It's say, okay, you can charge a bit, but it's tricky. It's tricky to build a sustainable business just with advising SMEs that need 1 hour work, and then are also probably not willing to pay $1,000 for this 1 hour, right? So that's challenging. That's one of the things that I'm thinking about now, how I could do that, because clearly my passion, the biggest passion, my passion is Bitcoin, but my biggest passion business-wise would be working for SMEs, because there I feel close to a lot of carpenters and painters and like people that are actually providing value to our society. So I feel I connect very well with them, and I would love to do something with them, for them. And so, but I haven't really figured that out yet. But as I said, I still have 2.5 months.
Mate, do you want to tell us a bit more about an elevator pitch about what your business is and sort of like what sort of things you've got going on currently?
Yeah. So as I said, those are the 4 projects that I'm currently working on. My business is called Berglinde, by the way. If you're interested, have a look. You can also find the newsletter there that I write weekly. Started to add some video and audio content as well. So yeah, that's where I work on advising businesses. So I want to build a Bitcoin B2B business. That's clear. I'm not going into the B2C space. That's more also a learning from my past experience. I think I'm better in long-term relationship building instead of big growth marketing, which is a super nice skill, but I'm just not as good as I wish to be. So I said I will focus on a B2B business. And I basically said, okay, I have 3 steps. First is education. That was at least my hypothesis. So I start with educating people. Then I go into consulting. And then based on that, ideally, I will build a product out of my own cash flows. So when I said the product piece, the product side of things can easily wait 2-3 years. So I wanted to build the education and consulting business in the next 2 to 3 years, and then slowly but steadily merge into a product. So I wanted to. It's also one of the things that I learned from Bitcoin. So I have a much longer time preference now. So I also said at home, we agreed that I basically plan to retire with this company now. So I'm not. I mean, never say never, and ask me in a few months or years again. Things can change, but right now I plan to work on it for the long run. And therefore, I try to now generate enough cash flow so I can sustain, I can pay myself, and then build a team based on that, and really that helps bringing Bitcoin to the business world essentially in one way or the other.
That's awesome. You just dived in and just sort of taken advantage of this entrepreneurial sort of opportunity in different aspects. And it's brilliant, mate. And I love that how Bitcoin energizes people to really sort of embrace sort of like this emerging future. And that just leads me on to my next question is, where do you see Bitcoin in 10 years? And you can talk about price. I know one Bitcoin is one Bitcoin, or how different the world might look in 10 years with Bitcoin.
Yeah, that's a very interesting discussion, and it's obviously I don't see in the future, but I mean right now I recently talked to Nico Jilch, who he also has a pretty good podcast in the German speaking world, and we talked in lengthy about that. And I mean when you look at the current status, on where we are, I think it's absolutely amazing. Like, if you would have asked me 3 years ago, 4 years ago, do we really have ETFs that go crazy? Like, really, they raise a lot of money. A lot of money is invested. Do we really have 2 presidential candidates now already in the 2024 elections? I would have said no way, forget about that. Like, still would have expected much more, much more bad mouthing, much more skepticism from politics. And I really feel like, which is also, by the way, an interesting learning. So as soon as the big asset managers, BlackRock and the Fidelities of the world, as soon as they started to engage with it, the whole media coverage is suddenly so much better. It's like, it's another thing that I think people should ask more questions. But well, it is how it is. So I think right now we are already so much further than what I would have expected. So now your question is, where will we be in 10 years? I personally think we will see, even deep into the Western world, that national banks put Bitcoin on their balance sheet. I personally don't think that Bitcoin will be kind of the only currency like that. I don't believe in that version of the hyper Bitcoinization. I believe there will still be competition on currencies. There will still be fiat currencies, but I do think national banks will strengthen their balance sheet with Bitcoin. I certainly hope that Bitcoin as a payment rail will be much further than where we are right now, which I'm also relatively confident. And well, price-wise, I just recently put up an article with a lot of content from Jesse Myers from Croesus, with like the Bitcoin potential analysis and like the monetary premium on all other asset classes. And there, I think the potential is immense. And I would say in 10 years we crossed the million USD in today's purchasing power. Because I don't know, like I would expect in the next 12 to 24 months, they will need at one point, maybe it's a bit longer than 24 months, I don't know, but at one point they will need to put so much liquidity back into the system, because we have like a lot of factors that we have to take into consideration. Like, there's a lot of unrealized losses on banks' balance sheet. Then we have extreme productivity gains with AI and other technologies, so which is by definition deflationary, and they need to they need to push the deflation or the deflationary aspects. They need to put that on the inflation inflation side of things. So they will need to print so much money. And right now we speak about 900 trillion USD of total assets in all asset classes, and that 900 trillion will certainly double or triple over the next 3, 4, 5 years, I would say. And that would obviously have an effect on our purchasing power with fiat. But yeah, as I said, I would say in 10 years we crossed the 1 million USD with today's purchasing power.
Nice. I like that we end the episode on a bullish note. But before we head to the end, Phil, we always have a challenge for each of our guests. And there's this saying, like, all roads lead back to Bitcoin. And we actually want to prove this. So I'm going to give you a word or a phrase now, and you will have to relate this back to Bitcoin. If you don't know anything and it fits, you can always say you can buy it with Bitcoin. So we're cheating a bit, but all roads lead to Bitcoin. So like, there's no question about that. Okay. And the word of the day for you is one that no one will understand besides you and me. It's hochigashli. How does that relate back to Bitcoin?
Hochigashli.
Yeah, it means like a kitchen cabinet.
Do I have to know this?
Yeah, hochi.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Hochigashli. Okay. How will it lead us to Bitcoin? Let's think. I don't want to go the easy way, so let me. Okay. So for everybody that didn't understand it, as Joel said, it's like kind of kitchen, whatever it is, kitchen
cabinet, closet, cabinet, whatever. Yeah.
And it's a word that is quite often used when we talk to other German-speaking countries like Germany or Austria, and it's kind of a special Swiss word because nobody else would say it like that. So hochigashli, how does it lead us to Bitcoin? I would say it does lead us to. I think hochigashli has a cultural bridge to other surrounding German-speaking countries. It's something that people like. People smile about it. They like it. It's something that makes us empathetic, and people think, oh, this cute little Swiss people with their weird words, and maybe that's not exactly what they will think about Bitcoin at one point, but I do certainly think that Bitcoin is the one thing that has the biggest potential to build bridges not only from country to country, but from person to person and from social shift to other social shifts, and it's just an immense net benefit to everyone in the world.
Nice. I think that's a very good take over it. Phil, before Ian closes out the show, if people have more questions, we'll link like your company website and newsletters below, but where could they also find you?
So you can find me on X, Twitter, and LinkedIn if you want, or definitely directly via email or on my website. It's berglinde.com. Looking forward to your feedback and questions.
Phil, thank you so much for sharing your rabbit hole story and spending your finite time here at Rabbit Hole Stories with us, and the same to our audio listeners and viewers. Thank you again for your finite time, and as always, guys, stay curious.